Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the School of Architecture and Planning at the University of Buffalo. I'm Ernie Sternberg. I'm a professor of urban and regional planning and an associate dean, representing our dean, Bob Shibley, who could not be here today. What you'll be seeing today is one of our graduate workshop studio capstone. It goes by many names, in which our students get involved with doing actual projects for the community. And that reflects the theme we have in the school, or our watchword, which is learning by doing, as a major component of our graduate study. The particular one you'll be seeing is a graduate studio result capstone in real estate development for our new real estate development program. You'll be hearing much more about what actually went on, except this, I wish to say that our new real estate development program began 4 years ago. It has turned out to be a very successful part of our school and has landed many of our graduates, or actually every single one of our graduates, successfully in very good real estate development jobs, either in the Buffalo area or in other parts of the country, including New York City. So welcome, and if you have any questions about that, there'll be plenty of people here to tell you more about it. Welcome to our guests over here today. I want to mention Mr. Carl Montante, Jr. of Uniland, who, excuse me, here we are, who was in effect, acted as the client for our studio, which is an educational effort, so they were not directly hired, but he was the client for the studio. Let's see, we have Town Supervisor of Clarence, Mr. Pat Casilio, is over here. We have Mr. Marc Bruffett, about whom you'll be hearing more, okay? And also you see one of the two co-instructors of the course, sorry, one is sitting right here, Professor Hiro Hata, and Professor Mark Foerster, who's sitting right there. They will later be introducing the students to you who will make a presentation. You'll all forgive me, I'll have to leave in about 20 minutes, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and open. I think Mr. Casilio starts right away, right? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Jill, I'm going to go off script a little bit, just like the president does all the time, so don't get nervous. Well, strangely enough, 3 or 4 years ago, I was here and my planners were here, Jim Callahan and Jonathan Bloor, for a lecture from Joe Minicozy about urban development and planning, and he did not like parking lots and parking spaces that are related to usually box stores. Because of the income for the town, you really can't, I hate to say it's about economics, but it is, what taxing can you do on parking lots? So really, after sitting at this lecture in this room, one of the first ones in the room when you opened it up after the remodel job, Town of Clarence set forth to rezone the Eastern Hills property so it didn't end up a car dealership or have big box stores moving to it. So we had, after that lecture, a living center in mind, similar to Crocker Park. So we moved forward as fast as possible and hired the proper professionals to have local laws that would guarantee a living center there, because it is the most, Eastern Hills Mall is the most valuable address in the town of Clarence. It used to be the biggest taxpayer in the 80s. Which really the school district will benefit most from any success at the mall, more than anybody else. So as an elected official, we wanted to see the mall back to its glory, and we felt the Living Center was a way to go. And in many meetings with Mountain Development, and now the partnership between Mountain Development and Uniland, we're hopeful in the very near future that Eastern Hills will be a living center inside the town of Clarence. And you know, most villages were formed by either there was water there, so we're going to form a village, or that's how far a horse could travel in a day, so a village was formed. And along with the help from your students and Gensler and the developers, they have an opportunity to create a village or living center for 5,000 to 10,000 people, create their own Main Street. Main Streets just tend to happen by accident, but they can create their own Main Street USA, just like Disney World, right in the middle of their living center. And we're hoping very much the future is bright for Eastern Hills. It's bright for these owners. The biggest part, if anybody is familiar with development, is getting local municipalities to cooperate, and we already have the zoning in place for the mall to move forward. So good luck to all of you, and I'm looking forward to see what the students have to present today. Carl.
I have my mic.
You're wired, okay.
Yep. Well, thanks, Pat. And I would just like to say what a privilege it is to be working with municipal officials like Pat and the planners for the Town of Clarence, Jim Callahan, Jonathan Bloor. It's unfortunately not the norm to be working with such progressive municipal officials, and to have developers and the town aligned in terms of what we're looking to accomplish together. And that really bodes well and gives us a great head start for this redevelopment of the Eastern Hills Mall project. So we couldn't be happy enough to be working with the town, and we're also privileged to be working with our friends from Mountain Development Corporation. I first met Chuck a number of years ago when we got together to talk about the potential of putting an ice rink at the mall as part of a redevelopment strategy. And we kept in touch over the years, even though that project didn't pan out. But we started talking more about some potential redevelopment ideas. And we found that our thinking was very similar. Density, it revolved around density, walkability, a mix of uses, and a very urbanized environment, but not in a city, in a suburb like Clarence. And so the stars, seem to be aligned with the town, with our partner, and now with our consultant, Gensler, we undertook a design competition and invited national, global firms from around the world to vie for the opportunity to help us master plan the mall. And I am very happy to say that Gensler, which is the largest architectural design firm in the world, is in Western New York to help really give new life to this 100-acre site. And again, we're very excited. We have a lot of work to do in terms of market research, financial feasibility, conceptual planning, but thankfully Gensler has got those services all under one umbrella. So it really makes our job a lot easier from a developer's point of view. And we couldn't be happier working with Marc Bruffett from Gensler's New York office, who is a principal of Gensler here on a regular basis. And incidentally, it's really interesting that we're here at UB, because the chairman of our partner Mountain Development, Bob Lieb, is a UB grad. I'm a UB grad. Marc Bruffett is a UB grad. And it's exciting that we've got this connection to UB. And now we've got the capstone aspect of it too, which you'll be hearing more about. But I'll turn it over to Mark.
Great. Thank you so much, Carl. My name is Marc Bruffett, and indeed I'm a 1992 graduate of the SUNY Buffalo School of Architecture and Planning. I had an extraordinary experience. I'm here today as a principal of Gensler. Gensler is a research-informed design firm, and that's very important. It sort of speaks to our DNA, because as a research-informed design firm, when we start an engagement like we have for Eastern Hills Mall, we don't come in with a sort of preliminary design. We don't have a solution at hand. We first seek to understand the community, its people, its needs, and its desires. And we've embarked on this process, and it's underway now to do that. And we're coming to understand the people and its character, what they like about their community, what they'd like to see improved. because we can see all of that coming together in a sort of town center style mixed-use community at Eastern Hills Mall. So it's an extraordinary opportunity to be a part of this process. You know, when I think about design as a practitioner, I see the world through the lens of Buffalo. This is where my own sort of world was opened up, you know, through Buffalo's rich architectural legacy. And it's such an honor to be back here. It's a point of personal pride to be a part of this project, and we're so excited to be the design strategy partner to both Uniland and MDC. So thank you so much, Carl, for that. We're underway with a market analysis right now. We're going to continue through a feasibility study. It will culminate later in 2019 with a conceptual master plan. And what the master plan is really a sort of visual representation of what the sort of community at Eastern Hills Mall could become. And we're going to actually create a brand for that as well that speaks to its potential and to the community. And we're excited to be a part of this process so very much. We're also excited to have been a part of the sort of capstone process, which Mark will be talking about. And we were, in conjunction with Uniland, evaluators of this student work. And that work was inspiring. You know, it sort of came full circle to me to see these sort of student practitioners, if you will, tackling the same problems that we are now tackling as professionals. And we thank them for their inspiration. It was great work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Well, and thanks again, everybody, for coming today. This is really a very exciting moment for all of us to be able to demonstrate some of the fantastic student work that's been done. And so I'll just make a few more comments and then get out of the way, because I know you've all come to see what the student work is all about. Let me just add a couple things to relate back to where Ernie started on this. You know, learning by doing, applied project learning, that's part of the DNA of our school. We happen to believe that students learn best when they take what they learn in the classroom and apply it in a real-world context. So this is really important. It's sort of a foundational principle for us. The other thing that's important for us as we thought about our work is that, you know, like in many fields today, most critical and complex problems are multidisciplinary. So as a part of our project, what we do is we bring the different disciplines of architecture, real estate, and planning together. We really need those three disciplines working together to come up with effective solutions to problems like this one, which is what to do with this amazing property that had a wonderful life and is now going to be reborn into something else. So those are a couple preliminary perspectives that we bring. So Professor Hiro Hata and I, and Hiro's just a fantastic urban design and architecture professor, one of the best I've ever had the opportunity to partner with. You know, we brought 24 graduate students together, again, from all three disciplines, architecture, planning, real estate development, to work together in teams, to think about and work on what might be the plausible futures for Eastern Hills Mall. Now, this kind of applied project learning works best when you have other good partners. And we had great partners, not only from Uniland and Mountain Development Company, but also from the Town of Clarence. I mean, Jim and John were with us many steps of the way. You know, Gensler came in along the way as well when they were hired. It was fantastic for us to have them involved with us, participating at different times during the semester, giving us feedback, evaluating and critiquing student work, asking good questions, telling us what was important to them. All this was really rolled into to what we did in a very meaningful way. And really the timing on this was so fortuitous for us. You know, so here we are asking our students to take a look at this at a very early stage. You know, what are the plausible futures for this property? And at the same time, that's what Mountain and Uniland are doing. And so without them having really finalized anything and sort of being at the early stages of discernment themselves, here we are at an early stage as well, without real without limitations, being able to think big and be creative. So Hiro and I asked our students to be aspirational, you know, to think big, to create some bold visions, as well as be practical. And listen, we'd be delighted if Uniland and Mountain adopted any of the ideas that our students came up with. And you'll see a few of those today. But this was an ideas project, and we didn't really go in with the expectation that anything that we came up with would be just implemented automatically. But hopefully it was inspirational, as Mark said, to the thinking that goes forward. And that's a wonderful result for us. So in 14 weeks, start to finish, we covered a lot of ground. What you're going to see today is really just a snapshot of all the work that went into to the project and what that student work was. So you'll see some images. You'll hear the students talk about, and we have a handout with some takeaways, some of the main lessons, what were the keys to success that the students thought would drive ultimate success in not only producing something that was market responsive, but also responsive to the community. And listen, we're very proud of our students. We couldn't bring all 24 of them with us today. Actually, we're in another semester and they're busy doing other things and have other classes. But we do have 4 of them today, and I think we're going to ask them to come up and present. First we have, and I'll just ask them to stand up as I say their name. Kevin Turner is, and these are all graduate students. So Kevin's pursuing a master's degree, actually 2 master's degrees in real estate development and architecture. Sylvester Millardi is pursuing a master's degree in architecture. Jeff Rayler and Mustafa Ardalan are both pursuing Masters of Urban Planning. And we're actually missing one student today, Emily Bowles, who's a real estate student, works as a project manager at Push Buffalo, which a number of you are probably familiar with, and she was called away to another meeting that she couldn't avoid, and she regrets not being able to be here today. So in any event, these 4 will sort of carry the ball for all their many colleagues who are not here today. So again, thanks so much. I think you're going to enjoy this part of the presentation, which involves the students talking about their work. And you'll see, by the way, and we noticed that a number of you were taking photographs, they did some great modeling, physical models of this. There's some wonderful tools, computer-aided design, CAD programs that are useful. But at the end of the day, sometimes doing a physical model is the best way to get a sense for what it will be like to be in a place. So students will probably talk about that as well. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to the students. So, and I think we're starting with Kevin.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all again for coming and joining us today. We're really excited to show what we've kind of been working on here at the university and display it to all of you, as well as our partners from the town, Uniland, Mountain Development, who've been really instrumental in making sure that we can actually achieve a lot of the work that we've been doing here. So like Mark said, we were a studio of 24 students. We were broken down into 4 different teams that worked together. Again, interdisciplinary from the 3 different disciplines, real estate, architecture, and planning. So what we wanted to do today from our quick snapshot is kind of introduce you to some of our main key points across all of the different teams that really arose from our research and our projects as we worked through the 14 weeks last semester. So to give you a brief overview before some of my colleagues go into a little bit more detail, we'll start with scale and character. Scale and character, these investigations grew out of really trying to research and understand the Eastern Hills Mall and the site. I'm fortunate enough to actually be from Clarence, so I know quite a bit about it, but I know a lot of my other colleagues really helped me actually learn a lot more about it in the process. And really understanding, again, one of the oldest towns in the country, what the community is like there, what they currently are like there, and what they're looking to do moving forward into the future. Next, we have kind of a visioning and theming process that each of the teams went through. So on the board here, we have 4 different visions that each team generated. A lot of this is looking at an implementation of really successful public space. We really think across all the teams that public space, good public space, designed for the community is really key to some of the success that we'll see at this site in the future. From those, we were able to develop a set of urban design guidelines, so a rule set pertaining not only to buildings, but again to open space, to streets, to trees, all sorts of things that can really generate good public space again. And then lastly, we wanted to touch upon sustainable growth. As we look into the future, we need to be concerned not only with eco-friendly or environmentally friendly design, but also good sustainable development processes and developments. We want to look at not only just singular catalytic developments or projects rather, but really a network of successful developments that all link together. So with that, I'll toss it over to Jeff here, and he's going to introduce his topic.
Thank you, Kevin. So in beginning this process, we essentially started conducting some research into scale and character of Clarence, Amherst, surrounding areas, also the region. So things we were looking at were demographics, the real estate development climate, the actual climate, the meteorological climate, and just other considerations that sort of formed our approach. So one of the big ones was built form. So this is kind of a suburban area, very to the east is very residential in character and becomes increasingly rural. And then also to the west, we have this site kind of bordering up against Transit Road, which is just, as many of us know, a very busy, kind of divisive corridor. And then along that corridor is a lot of big box, strip mall, commercial development. So I think one of the key takeaways for this project is that we wanted to sort of respect the existing conditions of the residential neighborhoods to the east, but also kind of set a precedent for more connected, responsible, approachable development along that corridor. So those are some of the considerations that we took from kind of a regional to down to more localized view. And then also we wanted to explore on site what is the scale and character of the development. And it's a large site, it's roughly 106 acres. And our approach to that was to kind of start this off with a catalyst. So what can we do that's going to create a draw for people and also tie that into sort of like a vision. So each of the groups had a separate vision, and Kevin touched on that a little bit, but he's going to explain a little further on that. Thank you.
Yes. Hello again. So to explain a little bit more about what each team did, as I mentioned before, a really heavy focus on developing good public open space. One of the ways that one of our teams developed is doing that via public art. There's a really great art culture in Buffalo already, in the city of Buffalo, and so developing the site in a way that integrates public art into the public space, into the programming aspects as well, can really create another node in that kind of network and link us back to the region as a whole. Additionally, with an art focus, this group kind of focused a lot on really generating a craftsman and an artisanal atmosphere, which in Clarence there is a really great emphasis on hand making and crafts making as well. Another focus that one of our teams looked at was on wellness. So making sure that we're providing programming that's promoting not just healthy living, but well living, and connecting all that together. They've done this, this model here that they have via a really great network of public parks that really promotes a lot of lively action between different buildings, between different programs, and makes you move and walk around a lot. Water is a really big point for a lot of teams, but in Team 3, or rather Team 4, they focused quite a bit on it. On a site that's 100 acres plus, water management tends to be a bit of a challenge, but this team kind of really embraced that and integrated that really greatly into their public space programming in terms of be it bioswales or retention ponds that are rather curated quite nicely with boardwalks and fountains just kind of everywhere within marketplaces and residential areas. So a really great way to look at how do we deal with kind of an issue of water runoff and really turn it into an asset. Lastly, on the board here, we have a group that focused on really communal gathering places, and they did this through a really great network of public parks. So similar to the group that I just mentioned that was really focused on wellness, but we really looked at the great community events and gathering aspects that Clarence has already, Clarence Home Days and all these other kind of great things, and really providing a network of versatile, bold parks that allows for that kind of great coming together of the community from everywhere, from Amherst to Clarence to everywhere in between. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mustafa to explain a little bit more about our urban design guidelines.
Hi, everyone. I will talk now about the urban design guidelines. We are trying to create a catalyst site, walkable and pedestrian-friendly development with a mix of uses. So we focused on some of the design guidelines. So one of them is the building scale and height. So we kept the height in the main corridors between 2 to 5 floors, just to maintain the community character and that visual connectivity with the street, and also because we want to create human scale development. The other thing that we were thinking about it was the storefront and facade transparency. So the transparency should be not less than 40%. So in this case, we're going to increase the visibility and the view shed, we also the visual connection from the inside of the buildings to the outside streetscape, green spaces, and the open spaces. And for the streetscape, we provide some light poles, street furnitures, some features like trees every 30 feet, seats every 15 feet. So we presented some of the design guidelines in the streetscape to make it more walkable and livable. Also, I want to mention about the garages. So we use the hidden garages between the buildings to make it invisible from the main streets. Also, instead of using the surface lot or open parking, and in this case, we're going to increase the density of the development. So actually, in this project, we want to use these design guidelines, urban design guidelines, to create a kind of development that would be encouraged the improvements along the transit road and the adjacent commercial corridors. And we extend our vision to connect this development with the adjacent neighborhoods. So for the sustainable growth, Sylvester, he can talk in more details about that.
Thank you. So yeah, really, when we talk about sustainable growth, I mean, one of the major things that we think of is not just growth over time, but it's really growth within the site to aid further development around the site. So a big part of that was really looking to increase the density within the sort of 100 acres that existed there, and then really creating a tight stitching network, as Kevin had mentioned, to really pull everything together. Additionally, when we think about sort of the ways in which that we can increase development in this area, we decided as a studio that creating an urban hub to really generate sort of development outside of the site in the future that might be influential to sort of Uniland and mountain development. As Jeff had mentioned, Transit Road is filled with very big box, low density buildings. And, as the students in the studio have exemplified here, creating density is really what generates a lot of revenue. It generates a lot of placemaking and ideas and strategies to really increase, the profession and the practice, and also just the public realm in general. And something that, that resonates sort of with us, and I think everybody can agree, on a professional level, sustainable growth is not limited to just design. It is really influential in sort of school and the profession itself. So, I think in school, the way that we're being taught now is very different than, maybe Mark or Carl have been taught. It's very much so interdisciplinary, and I think that's where this studio really is strong in sort of conveying that sort of that real world feel. And I think that's something on a personal level and a professional level, is a great experience for us to get to work with, professionals that are doing it. So, I mean, with that, I'll give it to Jeff to sort of talk about, his experiences with that too.
So my perspective is, as a planning student and aspiring to be a professional planner, many of the things that I presumably will be doing soon, is collaborative and also requires a synthesis of large amounts of information. And this studio was an excellent learning experience in that regard. We worked on a fairly large team of 6 individuals per group, and also had some excellent guidance from our instructors, Hata and Foerster, and fortunate to have a very receptive and supportive client in Carl, and overall just very good experience, and Kevin can fill you in from his perspective.
In my perspective, tends to echo both of theirs as well. Really bringing people together. I'll scoot around here. Bringing people together from the different disciplines. As many of you in the working profession may see this on a day-to-day basis, but from our academic experience, it's been really great to understand the different viewpoints that everybody's had. And we as a studio, really believe that getting people together from different viewpoints, different disciplines to really talk, really just talk, discuss and share their ideas and viewpoints on everything really is the way forward for making really great and good buildings and developments in the future. So in closing, I'd just really like, again, to thank the school, again, thank our professors, Mark Foerster and Hiro Hata, for their guidance in the studio. A really special thank you again to Town of Clarence and to Uniland and Mountain Development for their assistance and really support of the studio. Without their kind of forward-thinking perspective and really guidance and help along the way, a lot of this really wouldn't have been possible. So with that, I'll pass it off to somebody else.
Thanks, Kevin. So members of the media, feel free to ask questions right now in this setting, and then if you want to do one-on-ones, you're welcome to do that.
You guys were talking about all the collaboration that you guys had. Can you think of a specific example where maybe something from someone else's expertise kind of came in that you wouldn't have thought about previously that helped you change one of your ideas?
I think, especially when it comes to just being a single diploma candidate, going through the studios, you take on the sort of the one master planner designer aspect, whereas with this studio, learning things about real estate and development that I had never thought of to really influence the way that I design and think about design was something special. And I think that's something that is the way that the world works now. It's the way that the profession is moving. And it just makes for better design and better conversation through the disciplines. So, yeah.
What specifically through real estate was an idea that came through that you wouldn't have thought of previously?
So something as simple as like market research. And using that in a way that allows us to shape what types of programming really goes into our designs. Programming is a big part of mixed-use developments now, and it really is about experience. So if you can really generate those necessary programs that are used, that are really wanted in the community, that I think is something that works very well.
Questions for Kevin. Being from Clarence, what does it mean to be a part of this project in sort of the early phases of the plan, personally?
Yeah. Growing up, my mall was the Eastern Hills Mall. My grandma lives down the corner. Hi, Grandma. But yeah, I mean, it's really been a really great experience. I grew up in Clarence. I went to UB for my undergraduate. I've stayed here for my graduate here. So to be a part of actively being able to look at the town and shape it in the way moving forward, and the focus of the town on what's next, what's going to come next, what's the future. For somebody like myself, a quote unquote young person, seeing that Clarence is thinking about us and really thinking about how do we keep people here, how do we draw people here, how do we make this an environment for everybody to live in, was really something great that I really appreciated. And being on the design side of things, being able to actually design that and see what does that actually look like was a really great experience as well.
You said you learned several things from your colleagues and just looking into the town and what they want. What did you learn about your own town you grew up in that you didn't know before?
Yeah, well, a lot, like Sylvester mentioned, like on the market research sort of things, when we're looking at what the town actually is from a demographic profile, looking at everything from age spreads to all these other sorts of things. I always have my preconceived notions, and I think we all do, of where we live and what's around us, but it sometimes takes another perspective to kind of shine a light on something that you thought you knew but didn't really know. So yeah, like just really understanding who my neighbors are was really a great eye-opening part of that.
With the scale of this project, was that interesting to work with? I mean, again, you're talking 100 acres here. So what did that present to you in terms of looking at this project?
Did anybody else want to jump in real quick? I guess I'll lead off quick. I'm sure others have a response. But yeah, the scale of the project is, like you said, quite large. So really, it took us a long time to really wrap our heads around really how big the site is. We were able to go there. Our first site visit, a number of us actually got lost on the way in, believe it or not. But yeah, like understanding how to design for something that large and phase the development over that course of time and make sure that it's all interconnected really became a big focus, and something that led us to derive such a set of urban design guidelines and rules to kind of guide that.
Yeah, and I think also just to further that point, phasing, as Kevin had just mentioned briefly, was a big part, and it did play a big part in any sort of development of this size. And it's something that, as going through studios, you kind of just like take on one site and then put your design and you think that's it, it's done, but that's not the case. And that's really where, doing something this large and planning for something this large allows you to get down into the nitty-gritty of sort of the fine details of scale and really design for a better place.
I'll also just add that essentially we started with a catalyst. So we chose one smaller subset of the site and sort of developed that as a way to bring in investment, attention, et cetera. Also, we were planning on from the get-go what does the rest of the site look like during that time frame. So that also influenced our decisions as to where do we place structures, how can we maybe highlight strengths, mask weaknesses, and things like that. So it was definitely challenging based on the size of the site, but also it sort of helped inform our approach as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but none of these models had the existing structure. Was there any thought about keeping it or updating that structure?
So these models are actually showing just a small piece of the site, and these are the catalysts. So these are representative of what I'm mentioning as the catalyst. There was thought put into preserving the structure, but ultimately those ideas moved in a different direction. So there are some components, depending on which phase you're looking at, but ultimately our groups chose to pursue complete redevelopment of the site by the end of the final phase.
Do you want to ask any of the principals of the project some questions? Do you guys want to come up to the front?
Sure.
Do you want to talk about
Firing line.
the timeline and what's going to happen next?
Sure. Sounds good. Do you want me to tackle that first? So
I'm sorry.
how's this?
Yeah.
This better?
Yeah.
So Gensler is leading what's called the master planning for Eastern Hills right now. And this work was initiated in early January of this year. And at some point this fall, it'll sort of culminate with a sort of complete conceptual master plan and a brand for the site that sort of expresses the identity and aspirations of what the site could be. And along the way, we're conducting some market research to understand the community and how people shop and how they spend their time in sort of things that sort of delight them and things that are maybe missing from their lives that they would like to have. And we're going to conduct a financial feasibility study as well to make sure that this is a sort of market responsive sort of solution that we're sort of deriving and creating. And we'll come up with a series of iterative plans, be working with the city to make sure those are sort of approved and accepted. And so it's a sort of iterative, multi sort of phase process that will last most of 2019. And it's exciting because the opportunities are extraordinary. When we look at this 100-acre site, it really is a palette of possibilities. You know, many great mixed-use communities are a fraction of the size. So the scale alone affords immense opportunities. And we're going to spend time mulling over and considering a wide range of those and a wide range of uses.
Mark, is 100 acres really enough? Because some of these town centers, the ones in Reston, are certainly
Sure.
larger. Are you going to run out of elbow room?
No, we don't think we'll run out of elbow room at all. You know, when we sort of evaluate sort of mixed-use town center communities, very average ones sort of spread out all the uses evenly like peanut butter. And what we think this actually offers is a chance to have, you know, some open areas and some more dense areas, some really sort of pedestrian-friendly areas that might connect to some existing biking paths, and to encourage the sort of, you know, trends that we're seeing around health and wellness today. So we think that there is plenty of opportunity, plenty of space for a wide mix of uses. And in fact, you know, maybe this is a sort of series of uses we haven't even conceived of quite yet. So no concerns at all about running out of elbow room.
Are there certain development practices or just strategies that come with things like blocking wind, certain kind of fixtures you can use to block wind or increase warmth?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah, so there's a variety of sort of responses that we want to take. We want to make sure, first of all, that this is sort of oriented for the right ways, given prevailing winds and sort of solar sort of arrays. And we want to make sure that it also has sight lines and it responds incredibly well to its neighbors. One of the things that distinguishes this type of community, which we'll conceive of, is that it's a welcoming destination for everyone. If we think about shopping malls today, as a patron, you never sort of feel a sort of deep sense of belonging or ownership. But we think the Eastern Hills Mall sort of mixed use of tomorrow will engender ownership, that sort of feeling of it, and a feeling of belonging. And so what we want to do is make sure that it responds well to all of the sort of surrounding neighborhoods, and also to the transportation areas, whether it's transit and main or the sort of secondary feeder streets as well.
Are you limited in heights because you're on a flood pattern from the FAA?
We're not aware of any sort of flight restrictions because of that, but we have sort of taken a preliminary look at is the zoning from the Town of Clarence, and it's a sort of, you know, very enabling sort of zoning, you know, plan, if you will. And so we're excited about what that might allow us to do.
I want to give Carl a heart attack, but you're good for 17 stories, so we're ready.
That's a lot of economic development.
There you go. You know, I'd like to point out that this is the real deal living center. What really hasn't been brought out today besides the planning is the fact that the mall does not have a big responsibility on their mortgage. They're not upside down on their mortgage. They have control of all their leases. Last year at this time, we didn't have control of the Sears store. Now you do. So all 100 acres are available to them. They don't have to wait for a 99-year lease to close out before they can start development or try and work them into the system. So they're really ready to go from, all you need is $200 million. So it's the only stepping stone after the market study. But they're ready to go from the town. They're ready to go on their existing tenants and leases that they have there. And, you know, after they do the market study, then that's when you'll start your design, your design concepts to come up with a final project. But there's other projects in town that have lease problems or mortgage problems. This is a clean slate that they have to work with. Crocker Park, Jim, is only 64 acres, and it's very successful in Ohio, and we've got another 40 acres here to work with. Mm-hmm. So.
That is the beauty of the fact that this property is so large. 100 acres really gives us options to serve the market both in the short term and in the long term through the use of phasing. So markets and real estate trends and technology, they constantly changing. So, we're envisioning anywhere from about a 7 to 10 year build-out timeline. So you may see a cluster of development, every couple of years or so, and each new phase will be driven by the market dynamics at the moment. So it's a nice situation to be in, that depending on supply and demand and perhaps the community needs at the moment, we can integrate all those factors and be able to accommodate them over time.
You mentioned it's going to be a 7 to 10 year process, so then is everything going to be mapped out all at once, and then you'll say, okay, we're going to do this part at this point, or are you going to say, we've got this sector done, build it, and then kind of move on to the next as far as design? How does that all work out?
Well, Mark might be able
Sure.
to tell you better, but
Yeah.
it's always changing.
Yeah, one of the secrets to great phasing is to make sure that each individual phase is actually largely self-sustaining and creates a sort of experience unto itself. We like to create a little bit of early momentum that can drive successive phases. So part of what our thinking is how are those phases unfolding? How many are they? What uses come with which phases? What parts of the site sort of get tackled first and last? And we're going to build in a little bit of flexibility to sort of respond to changing demographics. One of the challenges that we have as a design firm when we're master planning a community like this is that everything is changing and shifting before our very eyes. So we see the sort of combination of, changing retail patterns and expectations for entertainment and how we come together to socialize, and those are not going to be fixed at any one point. So we're going to actually sort of do our best to sort of capture those trends appropriately and then build in flexibility, because we're certain those trends will continue to evolve over time.
Carl, can you speak to any specifics from the Capstone Studio projects that you feel will most likely end up as part of the master plan?
Honestly, I liked a lot of what I saw in each group. The art, the water, the wellness theme, every single group presented concepts that were very intriguing and really helped jumpstart the whole visioning process for the redevelopment of the mall. There's no guarantee, obviously, that we're going to be able to complete their vision. A lot depends on financial feasibility and market dynamics. But my hope is that over time you're going to see certain elements of each project in the town center over time. But this really encapsulates a lot of what we've been thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So, well done.
They really got the human scale correct. If there's a sort of single starting point that we need to be mindful of, it's making sure that this is designed around people. And when we think about what makes for a great place, it's often the spaces in between our built environments or in between our buildings. So pathways and boulevards and alleys and pedestrian-friendly sort of gathering spaces and parks. These are all the sort of extraordinary sort of connective tissue, if you will. And the student designs, went about them in very different ways, but we think they're on to some really great aspects there, and it sort of, again, is very inspiring for our process. When it comes to our own solution, we'll basically start with a blank slate, if you will, but we will sort of continue to use the sort of thinking and inspiration that they brought to this, and they got a lot of pieces right. I can attest to that as a professional and as a former student as well. So you guys have earned our respect for sure.